Okay, it's no secret that the writers of True Blood were looking to revamp the series. However, they all walked away from the table when they couldn't come up with any good ideas.
I think one of us just got his first vampire.
I think you're right.
Can you believe it? Right here in Bon Ton? I've been waiting for this to happen ever since they came out of the coffin 2 years ago.
After all, the first run of True Blood was incredibly amazing. But sadly, towards the later season, it started to lose its shine. This happened for several reasons. One, the audience grew bored because the characters didn't show much growth.
In the old kingdom, vampires nearly drank us to extinction. They drove us onto this plane.
Well, it won't happen again. I'm staying away from vampires. I can guarantee you that.
Oh, I know.
Two, they gave Sookie far too many romantic partners and love interests, and it didn't really help her storyline, to be honest. And three, they lost focus of the central and resounding theme of the entire show, which was humans and supernaturals must find a way to get along. Last but not least, they should have made Eric and Sookie a power couple. Like Richonne from The Walking Dead, these two characters could have battled obstacles together, strengthening their bond and forging peace for both supernaturals and humans alike. This is why I believe that Eric Northman was the best match for Sookie. And it is a great idea for a spinoff show. I'll explain how and why in this video, so please stay tuned.
If all I wanted was to taste your blood again, I could do it right now and there wouldn't be a thing you could do to stop me. But instead, I am asking you to be mine.
I explained in my other videos that Eric always had leading man potential. It wasn't only because he was drop dead gorgeous. It was also because he was set up to be the savior, the prince that was promised, or the one, so to speak. In fact, it was Eric who had the biggest transformation, going from a selfish, manipulative, cruel vampire to someone who had compassion for all humanity. Eric, my friends, was the full package, and if he had stayed with Sookie through all 7 seasons of True Blood, I think things could have ended much differently. But sadly, Eric, like all the other men on True Blood, suffered the same fate. They all lost sight of the big picture and started to put Sookie's life before their own. I know, this is a great plot point for romance novels. However, it doesn't go over well on the big screen or on television when the characters need to push a certain narrative or theme forward. As a result, the story gets muffled, causing the audience to get confused and, of course, to eventually lose interest. Now, we can all admit we were all on board when it came to Bookie, the Bill and Sookie romance that dominated season 1. It was mesmerizing to watch these two on screen because, let's face it, their chemistry was off the chart. Then something weird started to happen. Bill was supposed to be the poster boy for mainstreaming. Him, along with Nancy Flanagan, was supposed to convince the entire world that vampires weren't the bad guys.
As you can see, I did not burst into flames. We vampires are not minions of the devil.
The only problem was that once Bill kind of got involved with Sookie, he couldn't really think or do much of anything else. All of his motivations became about pleasing her, protecting her, drinking from her. Now, Bill wanted to climb up the political ladder to be the vampire king of Louisiana, not only for power but to protect Sookie from other vampires. Now, we do see a few tender moments between Bill and his progeny Jessica, but he mostly fails her because he is obsessed with Sookie. This bookie romance wasn't going to last very long because Bill didn't have a purpose that was bigger than himself. Everything was about Sookie. Sadly, the bookie story only gets more tragic because Bill never gets over her. We do see some growth with Bill Compton during the 4th season of True Blood, where he kind of pings-pongs back and forth of him wanting Sookie and then not wanting Sookie and then wanting Sookie to be happy with Eric. And I have to admit, there was a little bit of growth there. but Bill slides backwards when he becomes Billith in the 5th and 6th season. You think that Bill, being a day-walking, all-powerful, godlike vampire, would help him win Sookie's heart. But no, she only hates him more. Worse, she hooks up with Warlow, a total waste of a character who did nothing to help Sookie grow. The saddest thing about Billith is that this was a great opportunity for the showrunners to rekindle the romance between Sookie and Bill. Together, Sookie and Bill could have waged war and attained peace for humans and supernaturals alike, saving the world and their rocky relationship. The problem was, the viewers by this time weren't rooting for Bill or Billith. They were rooting for Eric. They wanted to see him rise up and defeat yet another powerful vampire. Sadly, whenever there's a battle between Eric and Bill, well, Eric always wins. However, Bill has been victorious in other battles. This includes his win over Sam Merlot, that kind but grumpy bartender and shapeshifter. Now, Sam Merlot was the first person to crush on Sookie, yet he was way too shy to make his move. Instead, he decided to admire her from a distance, growing increasingly agitated as a vampire moved in on the woman that he loved. Now, I've said this in other videos, I believe that Sam Merlot was a much better match for Sookie than Bill. Sadly, Sam had far too many issues to work through. In some situations, he even seemed to be a broken man. However, I'm not the least bit disappointed with Sam's storyline. I think the writers of the show did him justice. However, for the first 2 seasons, everything about him screamed beta. He was simping way too hard for Sookie, y'all.
How you doing, Sookie?
I've had better nights.
Yeah. Anything I can do to improve this one for you?
This man could have had any woman in the small town of Bon Tom. And after watching the full series, I kind of got it. I knew what the writers were going for. Sam was carrying the burden of shame. He couldn't fully commit himself to anyone because he didn't really know himself or accept himself or love himself. Sam's journey was all about self-discovery, and him swinging and missing in almost all 7 seasons of True Blood added to his storyline. In fact, I think that Sam was one of the few characters who stayed true to the theme. He went from being shameful of his shape-shifting nature to being a champion for supernatural rights. He even played vigilante, hunting down his villains like a bone-hungry hound. And as a result of this, my compassion for him grew. In fact, he is one of the characters that I didn't grow tired of watching. And I have to say that I was very happy for him when he finally found love and a sense of belongingness. Alcide. The sexy wolf was a beautiful beta turned alpha. He was a proverbial nice guy who got trampled over by his trashy girlfriend, Debbie. Debbie loved V more than she loved him. She also loved Cooter and the other wolves in the biker gang that she was initiated into. Now, Alcide, that was some serious eye candy, and I think the real reason why he stuck around so long was because he was so good looking. Yes, my friend, pretty privilege is a real thing. However, I think that Sookie and Alcide bonded because they were both going through rough patches in their relationship.
It's not for long, anyway.
You're still a killer. Hey, Eric Northman at your house. You must have a death wish.
Well, Debbie Pout's still Debbie Pout.
So?
She's an addict and an attempted murderer, and she lives in your house, and I'm not judging you.
Sookie, having little experience about relationships, was able to see that she had other choices. She didn't have to stay up all night with her vampire boyfriend. She didn't have to live in fear that maybe he might lose control and drain her dry, or that some other vampire would knock Bill over the head and take her from him. Sookie started to believe that she could have somewhat of a normal life being around Alcide. The only problem with Alcide is that he was a lot like Bill Compton. Like Bill Compton, he didn't want to be part of the pack because they were just too savage for his tastes. Like Bill Compton, he thought that he would be able to protect Debbie by keeping her sheltered. And like Bill Compton, he thought that if he gained more power and prestige, he would gain more favorability in Sookie's eyes. sadly, Alcide is another character who pings-pongs back and forth with no real resolution. You could argue that eventually he gets together with Sookie, but we all know that that relationship didn't last too long. Now, Eric, last but not least, the vampire Viking was truly the best match for Sookie and the best pairing for the show.
He's rich, and in his own way, he cares about you. He really does.
Thanks for the advice. But I will never be Eric Northman's puppet.
Shame for you, then. He pulls good string.
I explained in my other videos how Eric Northman was set up to be the star of the show. Like Neo in The Matrix and like Luke Skywalker in Star Wars, Eric was supposed to be the savior. With that said, he was supposed to be the main character, staying true to the main theme of True Blood, which was all humans and supernaturals must find a way to get along. Eric feels his first strike of compassion when he meets Sookie, and those feelings, rightfully so, deepen over time.
Eric Northman, you were in love with her.
In another life.
I don't know about Bill's weakness. I think I may have just found yours.
Eric gets more clarity when his mentor and maker cautions him about his inhumanity and his cruelty. However, it is Sookie who opens his heart. It is Sookie who causes him to be selfless. And Eric starts to put her before Pam and even himself.
It's a lot, Pam. I'll just go to Bill.
Tell Bill and I will rip you to pieces.
Be nice to her.
Now, this is a vital flaw in my opinion, because Eric starts to make the same mistakes that Bill Compton made over and over and over again. Now, again, this happens a lot in romantic shows, but we are focused on characters who are supposed to push a narrative forward and stay true to the overall theme. Now, this is where things get really confusing because Sookie should have been the one inspiring Eric and not Godric. Sookie should have been the one inspiring Eric to become a better person. Sookie should have been there fighting by his side. Sookie should have been written to be Eric's equal, not his subject or a poor damsel that needed to be saved. Now, we've seen this dynamic play out before in shows like The Walking Dead with Rick and Michonne. Both characters are of equal strength. Both characters push each other to be better people. Both characters work to strengthen their bonds while fighting to protect their families, their tribes, and all humanity. Eric and Sookie could have been the true power couple of True Blood. However, it's not too late to bring them back to the big screen. That's if the writers of True Blood are truly interested in an Eric and Sookie spinoff. So what do you guys think about Eric and Sookie being a real power couple? Please sound off in the comments below.